Before I go into the video, I'll address a bit of an elephant in the room. Yes, I do have a little bit of a black eye. No, it's not eyeshadow. I managed to get headbutted at jiu-jitsu a couple of nights ago, but I didn't want to hold off putting together this video anymore. So now we've got that out of the way, what this video is going to be about. It's going to be about the close. And the close is that tiny little section of the call, that last little bit of the call that seems to carry all of the weight. And what I mean by carry all of the weight is at that point, we're waiting for the yes, and you can feel the pressure in the call kind of rise, and so can the prospect. And by the time you get to this point, you will have gone through to discovery. You will have figured out what they need to see, and you will have matched your pitch to everything that you found earlier. As in, they want to get to ABC 1, 2, 3. This is how we're going to do it, and this is what it looks like, and this is what we're going to do to get you to ABC and 1, 2, 3. Once we've gone through that, this is after the pitch, we're trying to see if we can actually get that yes. And just for reference, my selling style, I don't really believe in objection battles post-close, and I know a lot of people do, and that's okay. You go through the pitch, go through the close, and then you'll leave 10 to 15 minutes for an objection battle. As far as I see it, I could think of nothing worse than gearing up for that at the end of every call. The prospect doesn't leave the call feeling good. It's really tiring. I think it's much, much easier to handle it upstream. But getting back to my process on the actual close section of the call itself, if you listen back to all of my calls, you'll hear exactly the same sequence. And it's 3 steps. There is a transition, there is a no-based trial close, and then there is the close line or the ask itself. So starting with the transition, it's always the same line. Okay, we've covered a lot. Let's go through some questions. And the thing that you notice about that, I didn't ask if they have any questions, because they always have questions. And I don't want them to hang on to this any longer, because those little questions that they don't ask now, those things that are genuinely on their mind, they're usually the ones that will rear their head in about 5 minutes. And that's think about it, need to talk to someone, not sure if it's the right time. Those are the ones that you want to pull out now. So even if they say no, there's no questions, I pressure test. And I'll say no questions at all. Everyone has at least one. And there it is. There's that one question that would have caught us a couple of minutes down the road if we hadn't have pushed for it. And then this is where we handle those problems and we make sure that they aren't genuine deal breakers. So once we go through that, I go for a no-based trial close. And if you don't know what a trial close is, essentially it's the little close, it's the test before you actually go for the proper close. And it became really big and really popular if you've ever heard of yes momentum. So the theory behind yes momentum is essentially you get the prospect saying yes, saying yes, saying yes to little trial closes, so that when you actually ask for the sale, they're just instinctively going to say yes. But the problem with that is it's played out and people have seen it so many times over. It was romanticized in sales movies and TV shows. They know what's actually going on. Whereas what I do is I go for a no-based trial close. And if you follow Chris Voss or Jim Camp, they go a lot on the safety of no. That's what I lean into, and it works really effectively. And it's always the same line. Can you think of any reason that this wouldn't work for you? And again, I'm inviting them to give me any issues before they become objections and before I ask for the sale. And the thing is, 1 in 50, if you've done everything right, 1 in 50 will say a reason that they think it might not work. Again, the best time to find out, and very rarely is it a legitimate deal breaker, but again, it's much better to find out if there is a genuine handbrake on things moving forward. It's better to find out now than after 25 minutes of objection battling. And if that's the case, no worries. You decide on next best steps from there. But if not, figure out a way for it not to be a problem. And following that, that's when we actually go into the close line itself. So to recap, a transition. We've gone through a lot. let's go through some questions. Then second, the no-base trial close. Can you think of any reason that it wouldn't work for you? And now we're going into the ask itself. And this line, it's not rare. It's pretty well known, and it comes from a book. The book is called The Perfect Close, and it's by a guy called, I'm going to pronounce his surname wrong, James Muir, Muir. And that book is 284 pages. I feel like I wasted 4 to 5 hours of my life because it can be summarized in one page or about 30 seconds. So I'll try and do it really quickly here for you. And the premise of the whole book, it resides on one line. And that line is, would it make sense to next step? And that might be, in our case, would it make sense to get you started? And then if they say no, you have so many different options on what you could do. So, for example, if they say no, no worries. That being the case, would it make sense to? And then you add in a secondary option, something that's going to rescue the sale, something that's going to keep it moving forward and not be a halt to the call. Or if they say, no, it wouldn't make sense to get started, no worries. What's the main reason it wouldn't make sense to get you started? Now, I know these are minor nuances. They're very small details, but this is where the good get differentiated from the great. And you can have a very gentle conversation about, okay, what's the main reason that it wouldn't make sense to get you started? Why wouldn't it make sense, as opposed to, well, why don't you want to get started? They don't have to defend themselves. You're talking about the topic. And this is a very, very versatile line. You can use it in a lot of different areas because it's easy to use and it's not harsh like most of the close lines out there. And when you think about it, if you were to hit someone with, it's cringeworthy to say, if you were to hit someone with Visa or MasterCard, they're backed in a corner. And essentially, they have really two ways that they can go: Visa, MasterCard, or no. So then you're trying to save the sale. This is not what that does. Now, the other side, it gives the prospect a really clear line, a really clear path to what has to happen next. So the vague lines that leave it open to interpretation, and I understand the theory behind is you want them to come to you. I've found, at least when I've used them, they can go off in a lot of different directions. Whereas at least with this, would it make sense to get you started? That's the next logical option. Let's follow that path. When we go through this as well, so by the time, and this is something to keep in mind, by the time you get to the close line itself, that's more of a formality. You should know by that point whether it's going to be a yes or a no. And the more you do it, the better you get. But when they say yes, it's always exactly the same thing. Amazing. Well, I'm very glad to be the first one to say welcome to company name. It's great to have you. You wait for them to smile and they say thank you. And then what you do from this point. So they've already said yes, they want to come on board. I know most people get excited and they want to get off the phone as quickly as possible and they rush through this section. Don't do that. The sale is not done yet. You take them through what happens now. And that could be as simple as, all right, so what's going to happen is I'm going to grab a link, I'm going to drop it in the chat. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to collect your contact details, email, company name. It's also going to grab your payment details, and then it's going to process the first payment. Now, while you do that, I'm going to be writing the notes to organize your onboarding, and then we're going to book in your onboarding following that. Does that sound okay? Yep. And then you help them through this process. So take them by the hand. And the reason is you do this every day. They don't. This is maybe often the first time that they've invested with someone that they met over the internet. Maybe their first coaching program, whatever it is, you still have to take them by the hand and walk them through. But the reason I use this, again, everyone has their own version. And this, for me, I've tried so many different sequences, so many different lines, so many different questions. And based off a whole lot of sales calls and a lot of sales, this is the one that seems to work the best. And it removes all of the obstacles. It's not confusing. It's not salesy. It just works. But again, the thing to keep in mind with this is by the time you get to the close, the ask itself, it shouldn't be a surprise that they say yes. You should have removed all the potential objections and removed all of the roadblocks. It is just a formality. But on the back, I shared this in a newsletter a few weeks ago. On the back of using it, there's been a number of people that have implemented it and got some really good results. So actually implementing this, action steps, write it out in your script, have it as a 3-step sequence, follow the steps, don't skip any of them. And then I think you'll be pretty well surprised at how effective it is.